Good afternoon, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to our TeacherMatic Community Webinar. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate you being here. And quite honestly, TeacherMatic would not be TeacherMatic without you, our community. Personally speaking, this is one of the most exciting parts of what we do, these community webinars, where we get to hear directly from you to see how you're using TeacherMatic and to learn from the creative ways you're embedding it into your teaching and learning. For me personally, this is what really does motivate me and inspires me, and I can say the same for all the team here. Every time we hear about how TeacherMatic is making a difference in classrooms, it reminds us why we built this platform in the first place, to support educators, save time, and improve teaching and learning. So normally Peter would be hosting today's session, but unfortunately, due to a family bereavement, he's unable to join us. So we send him our condolences and prayers at this difficult time. So with that being said, I'm Isam. I'll be your host for this webinar, and I'm really, really excited to spend the next couple of hours with you, hearing from our practitioners, sharing ideas, and celebrating the amazing work that's happening across our community. So here's a quick look at the agenda for today. We'll start with a short update on some of the latest technical improvements and new generators from Ollie and Richard. They'll walk us through what's new and what's coming soon on the platform. And, you know, as you would expect, it's always one of the most popular parts of these sessions. After that, we're going to be joined by Mafa Adestani, Teaching and Learning Manager at Stanmore College, who'll be sharing how their staff have been using TeacherMatic in streamlining planning and reducing workload. And it's always brilliant to hear how colleges are embedding TeacherMatic in different contexts. And Stanmore's story is a great example of that. Then we'll hand over to Martin Peoples, who'll lead a short session on AI and education, governance and ethics, a really important area as institutes continue to develop their own AI policies and frameworks. After that, it'll be back to me where I'm going to share with you some of the latest updates on TeacherMatic support and training. We'll then open up things for questions and discussions and community sharing before we wrap everything up at 3 o'clock. So before I hand over to Ollie and Richard, I wanted to share something that really shows how far TeacherMatic has come and our global user activity map. As you can see, TeacherMatic has well and truly gone international. What started here in the UK about 3 years ago has now spread across almost every continent, with educators using it from North America to Asia, from Europe to Africa and beyond. It's amazing to think that teachers all over the world are using the same platform to plan lessons, create resources, and support learning, all driven by the same mission: to improve teaching and learning, saving time. But I think one of the most important things is inspiring our learners and changing their lives for the better, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Now, if you take a close look at this map, you'll spot there are still a few countries not yet colored in. Places like Greenland, a few parts of Central Africa, and interestingly, parts of South America and the Pacific Islands. So if anyone here happens to have a friend, a cousin, or a former colleague teaching in one of these places, do let us know, because we'd love to see those parts of the map light up for everywhere. So it's a lively reminder that this is just still the beginning of the journey. just carrying on this theme, this slide gives you a sense of just how diverse our user base has become in terms of language. TeacherMatic is now being used in more than 20 languages. That makes the community, this community, so special. It's a network of teachers around the world sharing ideas, challenges, and solutions. And finally, here's a quick look at where our users are joining us. So it's fantastic to see this global growth. It really shows TeacherMatic is being recognized as part of a wider movement to rethink how we use technology to support teaching and learning. And as you already know, the platform is evolving all the time. And much of this is thanks to the feedback we receive directly from you, our community. Every suggestion, every piece of feedback really does shape the direction of TeacherMatic. And today we'll be hearing about some of those changes in action. So with that being said, I'm delighted to hand over to Ollie and Richard, who'll be sharing the latest on new generators, upcoming improvements, and a few exciting developments that are just round the corner. So over to you, Ollie and Richard. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sam. It's actually Richard and Richard if you look at our names on Zoom. Okay, bear with me and I'll share my screen. So I'm going to start off with development updates and updates to the platform, and then I'm going to hand over to Richard for recent changes to generators and the work he's been doing. So starting off with our recently released Moodle plugin. This is now available on moodle.org, and it allows you to do two things from within TeacherMatic, one of which is to export any of our question types directly into the Moodle question bank. So from our multiple choice questions generator or our very short answers generator, you can export into a connected Moodle, and those questions will be sent directly to the Moodle question bank. The other thing it does is anywhere where a generator supports Word or PDF exports, you can also have the results of your generation exported as a PDF into your Moodle course. So that's what's happening to the right-hand side of this slide now. And while I'm talking about the Moodle plugin, just to say that we've put quite a lot of work into our integrations page, which you can find at teachermatic.com/integrations. And this details not only the plugins that we've got and the integrations with things like Google Classroom, but it also lists all of the export options we support and where you'll find those in TeacherMatic. Okay, next up is something that has been an iterative process and we're still working on, but Word and PDF exports are now greatly improved compared to a few months ago, especially in terms of things like tables, which were often strangely sized and the column widths weren't as you'd expect them to be. However, now tables are more balanced. We can also support different styles of header. And we've just recently introduced the ability to accommodate different fonts as well. So in the near future, you'll see things like more age-appropriate fonts and things like our worksheet generator for younger learners. And of course, landscape and portrait, which you may already have seen in some of our generators. And here is another feature that we've recently released, and that's the ability to both maximize and minimize generators. So maximizing is very useful for seeing things like a landscape rubric, Whereas minimizing means that if you're halfway through filling in the generator form, you realize that you need to go away and get something, you can then minimize that generator, go and generate something like a rubric, and then come back to your, say, feedback generator and use that rubric within it. All minimized generators will end up in this tray at the bottom of the page. And I should say, for the moment, you can only have one instance of a generator. So you cannot have multiple versions of the lesson plan generator open at the same time. Okay, now we're moving on to some imminent features. So the first is image generation. And there's been some concern about the environmental impact of using AI for things like image generation. So the approach that we've taken is we're using stock images as the first port of call. We are providing you with Creative Commons stock images, correctly attributed, and then we're giving you the ability to improve those images with AI image generation. So in the example to the right here, the stock image it provided for reinforcement wasn't particularly good. So you can hover over an image, click replace with AI, give it some additional keywords. And then it does take some time, but it will generate an image, which is hopefully to your liking. You can regenerate like you do with any other generator in TeacherMatic. And when you're ready, you can then insert that into the output. So this is a simple version of the flashcard generator, and that's probably going to be where we first launch this functionality. But a major part of this as well was the ability for our PDF and Word and various other export options to support images as well. So whether it's AI image generation or it's in some other form, you may well start seeing more images and media in our exports in the near future. And then the next, and I think the last imminent feature is bulk uploading and PDF annotation. Richard's going to cover bulk uploading as well, but this is a whole system that we're working on, which will allow you to drag and drop a whole class of students' work into this interface. It will then process them one by one and give you additional feedback types, such as PDF annotation. So this will be a way in which you can get several types of feedback for a single piece of students' work. So it could be PDF annotation in addition to the same kind of formative or summative feedback that our current feedback generator provides. And also coming soon is the ability to recognize handwritten students' work in the form of perhaps a scanned PDF. So currently we can accept image files, images taken of handwritten students' work, but we will soon be able to do that as PDF or Word documents as well. And then just to mention a few things which are upcoming over the next few months. So firstly, there's onboarding, which will essentially allow you to set global preferences within TeacherMatic, which will then take effect in various generators and various situations within the platform. So once that's been done, you won't need to do things like repeatedly select the same thing within generators. You'll just do it once, ideally when you create your account, and then not have to worry about it again. We're also working on audio generation, which is something that's requested quite frequently by language teachers. So we'll implement this in a few select places at first, and then perhaps more widely across TeacherMatic. We've also got link generators, which you may have heard me talk about before, but this is essentially now you've generated this. Would you like to use this as a base to generate that? So linking generators together in that way. And finally, better multilingual support. So splitting the UI language used with the output language, especially useful for language teachers, and then also having a locality as well, separate to language and UI language. Okay, that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of our upcoming functionality. I'll now hand over to Richard, but if you've got any questions, please feel free to save them in the chat and I'll try my best to answer.
Thank you, Ollie.
Hope
everybody is able to hear me now. We should be able to see my responded to request screen. Can somebody confirm that for me?
We can see it, Richard, yes.
Yep, thank you very much indeed. Just a note on the chat box. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm at the moment not able to post to everybody, only to my colleagues on the panel. We might need to look at that in a moment. However, let's move on with following on from both Esam and Ollie. Esam was saying earlier on how we try to develop TeacherMatic partly by responding to requests. So I wanted to show you a couple of things that have come directly out of requests from users. And the first one is the multiple submissions ability of the feedback generator. Ollie showed you that there will be a full marking functionality added to the feedback generator very soon. But in the meantime, and this will stay available as well, there is a new, very simple version of the feedback generator. It's our most popular generator, the feedback generator. So responding to people's requests to be able to upload multiple student work at the same time, rather than have to go into the generator and back out again and then in again with different student work. At the moment, this is in beta mode. So it's in beta test. And at the moment, we've restricted it to 5 pieces of student work. That will be expanding to a much, much larger number. And at the moment, it will only work with document files or text-based files, that is Word documents and PDFs. That will also be expanded. So very soon you'll be able to put multiple versions of multiple students' work up into the feedback generator and get lots of results. So I've got a little demonstration of how that works for you. Here it is. You'll see at the moment there are 2 feedback generators, the enhanced one, which is the standard generator, and the multiple submission. Those will merge in due course, but let's have a look at how the multiple submissions generator works at the moment. So it's very, very similar to the original generator. There's 1 or 2 tiny changes. So let's look at how we do this. Let's upload an assignment brief so that we know what the student's supposed to respond to. This is one on the American writer O. Henry. And we can now choose to upload submitted files with an S. So I've got 3 here, a good one, a mediocre one, and one with errors just for test purposes. And there we are. There are the 3 files we want to mark. And we have a new choice here. Do we identify the student or not? Personally identifiable information is handled differently in different organizations. More of that later. Let's choose some formative feedback based on a grading scale, and we'll pick one of the standard grading scales. Outstanding, good, unacceptable. We'll assume we're in England here. So we'll choose a level 2 English level, and let's generate. So almost exactly the same as the previous generator or the existing generator, but it's come up with 3 lots of feedback. And as you can see, here we are. We have Finley Vast, submission number 2 there, and submission number 1 by Lisa Good, each of them separate. So we've analyzed 3 and given the assessment results for 3. If we wanted to, we could have said, don't show me any information about the individuals, but we could also use the refine function to remove any PII, personally identifiable information. And as you'll see, if we move up now, here we have, so Finley, whatever his name was, has disappeared, and we've just got the submission number now. So that's a very, very quick rundown. We can, of course, export the output to be able to return that to the student once we've checked it ourselves. Of course, as I always remember with feedback, human intervention is really important. But that's a very quick look. There's the export. Very quick look at the multiple upload feedback generator. Essentially, the two differences are that you can choose to show or not show the student identification information if it's in the file. And the second is the ability to upload, at the moment, up to 5 text-based submissions by students, but that will be expanding very soon. So that's the multiple upload feedback generator. Another much requested generator is the lesson ideas generator. You'll all know, or those of you who teach at least, will know the lesson plan generator, I'm sure. I'm actually showing our languages version here, but we have one called the enhanced version, which is what most people use. But people have often said to me as we've chatted over things, can we have a generator that just gives us ideas for lessons? So we've got something we want to teach, but we're not sure what would be a good lesson for it. We can then take that on to plan the actual lesson, but give me some ideas first. So we'll have a quick look at how that works. So here's a screenshot of lesson ideas. The topic in this case, I'm dealing with further education here. Obviously, this applies right across all the sectors we deal with, from primary up to postgrad. But in this case, animal health and welfare, which is part of the animal care and management course. We want 5 suggestions, and let's have some ideas on ethical considerations in this area as well. We don't have to put in anything into the additional information box, but in this case we have, and we've chosen the sector. We can also do more about enabling special considerations when we're creating teaching materials or ideas in this case. So in the more about the teaching section, which is present in all the teaching related generators, we've got T-level alignment, which is a standard alignment system for further education, not applicable to every type of course, but to many courses. In this case, therefore, we're going to align to the English T-levels in a group called Agriculture, Environmental and Animal Care, and the subject, the specific T-level, is Animal Care and Management. And below that, you can see that I've also asked for any suggestions about potential health and safety issues. And there are many other things we can ask for in this, but I'm not going to go into those details because really this is just to tell you about this new generator lesson ideas. So when we click on generate, after a few moments, not as immediate as that, but pretty quickly, it's come up with 5 ideas, and here are 3 of them. There's a debate on ethical dilemmas in animal welfare. What it's about, any notes that we need to do, and that will show us details of how it aligns, for example, with the T-level, and any resources we might need. Second suggestion is a workshop, biosecurity, very much on our mind here because, as it happens, I'm also a chicken keeper, and with avian flu around, we have to be very careful about biosecurity here in Herefordshire. So we've got lesson ideas. Another one coming out the bottom there is a role play lesson. So it's giving us ideas of how we might present this material to our students, which we can then take. We could use any of these ideas, feed them into the lesson planner itself, and then get full lesson plans from that. So there we are. That's the lesson ideas generator. Oliver mentioned image generation. It's on its way, but it's not there yet. It won't be very long now at all. But flashcards was the one he demonstrated. That we also have a generator called Prepare a Presentation, which creates for you a very quick way of creating a PowerPoint. But neither flashcards nor Prepare a Presentation have had images in them until very recently. So I'm going to show you how we've dealt with suggestions for images in flashcards, and this is true in Prepare as well, and there are other generators to come with this, until we've got full image generation available. So here we're asking for flashcards on the topic of mechanical automotive transmission. The area of study is motor engineering. I could add more guidance if I want to, but we'll leave that blank. Number of flashcards I'm asking for is 10. And down the bottom here, you can see I have Would you like image suggestions? No. Yes, I'd like illustrations. Yes, I'd like photos, or yes, I'd like any type of image. So we've clicked on photos here. Let's see what it comes up with. There's the bottom of the cards themselves at the top there, but down the bottom you'll see we have image suggestions. And when I click on image suggestions now, here we go into Pixabay, which is one of the largest of the royalty-free image generators. Please make sure you read their terms and conditions when using these, but in general, all Pixabay images are royalty-free. Occasionally, you might have to name the creator of the image, but they're all available for use. So it's come up, it says, with 19,217 photos. That seems unlikely to me, but many of these will be relevant to your course. So it gives you a way to easily find images that you can use on your flashcards or in your presentation. So I hope you'll find that a useful addition, and we will add that to further generators, at least until the full image generation functionalities are available, and we could leave both of them available if you find them useful. And finally, from me, we have this function called roles, and Oliver and I were discussing this earlier on, and I don't think we've ever gone into any details about this functionality, which actually we added several months ago. But on your main TeacherMatic screen, on the top right-hand side, you have this button which says all roles in normal circumstance. But we want people to understand just how many different roles there are which TeacherMatic can help. So there it is up on the right-hand side. And when we click on it, we can see that we've got a really good list, all the different roles. These are generators that might work best for teachers. We might want to go to the next role. Let's have careers office. Generators that careers officers might find very useful. The first one, by the way, is very popular. Might have assessors who want feedback generators and rubric generators, multiple choice questions. We've got administrators, leaders. How about leaders? Well, we've got self-assessment advisor, improvement plans, change management, state of the nation, policies. So that roles area there is something that we really haven't plugged enough, perhaps, but it is really useful, whatever your role. And please, if you're in one of those roles, but you know that your colleagues in other roles aren't using TeacherMatic, all these generators are included in your license. So please spread the word that we can help a lot more people than just teachers. About half our generators are teaching based, and the other half cover lots and lots of other roles. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have for you. Sorry, I have to move forward on a slightly different way once that's there. So going to the next one. So just a reminder, very briefly, we've talked about multiple submission feedback generator, the lesson ideas generator, the image suggestions for flashcards and prepare a presentation at the moment, look out for more, and the roles option. And that's it from me. That's my email address is there. If you have ideas, if you have any issues, especially if you're trying any of the beta test mode items like the feedback multiple submission generator, please feel free to get in touch. It's my job to oversee these developments with my colleagues. Please let me know, let us know any more that you need to. And that's it, Esam. I'd like to hand back to you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Apologize for my very fast demonstration of things there, but I think we're just on time. Thank you. And
Brilliant.
Sorry.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was amazing. So thank you, Ollie and Richard. Some really exciting developments. And as always, it's great to see how TeacherMatic continues to evolve based on what educators actually need in the classroom. So once again, Richard and Ollie, thank you so much for the hard work you're doing here. So next up, and I'm really pleased to welcome Martha Adestani, who's the Teaching and Learning Manager at Stanmore College. So Stanmore has been doing some fantastic work embedding TeacherMatic across their different departments. And Martha's going to share how they've been using it to streamline planning, reduce workload, and encourage staff creativity. I should also mention, by the way, that Stanmore College won last year's TeacherMatic Award for outstanding use of AI. So a huge congratulations again to Martha and the whole team for that achievement. We'll be running the awards again this year. So if anyone out there is doing something innovative with TeacherMatic, now's a great time to start thinking about your own submission. What I really love about these community sessions is hearing real stories, how teachers and managers are using the platform day to day, what's been working really well, and what they've learned along the way. So Martha, it's great to have you with us, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to share how Stanmore College has embedded TeacherMatic across our provisions, not just as a time-saving AI tool, but as part of a wider digital innovation and inclusion strategy. Over the next few minutes, I'll walk you through how we implemented it and the measurable impact it's had and what's coming next for us. So our journey began back in February 2024 when we introduced TeacherMatic as part of our cross-college digital innovation strategy. Initially, our focus was on reducing workload, such as lesson planning, assessment creation, scaffolding for SEND learners, and generating smart targets according to learners' needs. What we quickly realized was that TeacherMatic did more than just save time. It helped us create a consistent language for teaching quality by aligning lesson objectives and feedback across departments. We also embedded it into our teacher training courses so that new and developing teachers could learn how to use AI responsibly to get ideas and plan inclusive, engaging lessons for the start of their careers. So our usage data shows continuous and healthy engagement throughout the year. We had over 50 active users by June 2025, and on average, each user generated more than 20 resources per month. The most popular tools were PowerPoint generators, feedback generators, schema work, and multiple choice quiz generators. And also, lots of our teachers use chat with TeacherMatic. All of these generators help teachers focus more on learners rather than admin. On average, colleagues reported saving 7 to 10 hours per month, and many reinvested that time into coaching sessions, differentiation, or the quality of feedback. On this chart, you can see how usage has evolved since February 2025. You can see a clear rise in activity around the time we invited TeacherMatic to deliver staff workshops on site just before the rollout of our new sequence of learning, which is the same as schema work. We just rebranded it. Usage remained strong afterwards as teachers continued developing and refining their sequence of learning. And in September, you can also see another peak associated with continued work on sequence of learning, and it led into October, where teachers basically started setting smart targets as well for the learners. One of our biggest priorities at Stanmore College is inclusion. TeacherMatic helps teachers to differentiate materials for EHCP and SEND learners, scaffold content, and ensure consistent structures across sequence of learning and assessments. Coaches and mentors have used it to design reflective prompts and professional development plans tailored to individual teachers that they are supporting. Managers use generated summaries and insights to identify departmental strengths and plan for targeted CPD interventions. And this combination of inclusivity, efficiency, and reflection has made TeacherMatic a cornerstone of our teaching and learning culture, basically. Our success with TeacherMatic has been rooted in how we've engaged staff We organized CPD workshops and one-to-one support sessions to get everyone comfortable with the platform. New teachers were introduced to TeacherMatic during induction, so it became part of their daily toolkit from the very beginning. We also created an in-class coaching model using real examples. For instance, comparing a traditional lesson plan with an AI-assisted one, which helped teachers see the practical impact. And finally, we've shared success stories and regular communications through staff channels to keep momentum strong. For learners, the difference has been clear. Lessons have become more engaging and consistent, and feedback is more structured and timely. For SEND and EHCP learners, teachers now use AI-generated scaffolding and consistent adjustments, ensuring that all learners receive fair and tailored support. We've also noticed that TeacherMatic has improved lesson clarity and assessment design, giving learners a clearer sense of what success looks like. In short, AI has become a tool for equity, not just efficiency. Looking ahead, we are expanding TeacherMatic's use into support areas, such as mentoring, coaching, and student services. And also, I need to mention admin areas as well. We want to further empower our mentors to use the same reflective tools that teachers use, so our professional development is consistent across the organizations. We'll also continue sharing our best practice models with other FE providers and maintain our engagement through ongoing training and curriculum integration. The goal is to keep AI innovation sustainable, ethical, and always centered around improving the learner experience. To close, I want to thank TeacherMatic for recognizing Stanmore College with the Gold Organizational Award. The recognition reflects our teachers' creativity, our learners' engagement, and our shared belief that technology should enhance, not replace, the human element of education. If anyone would like to connect or see examples of our work, please reach out. I mean, you can see my email here. Thank you again, and look forward to hearing about your experience with TeacherMatic as well. Thank you, Sam.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Martha. That was absolutely brilliant. And it's always so inspiring to hear colleges like Stanmore, you know, embrace TeacherMatic, reduce workload, improve teacher well-being. You've got a full force with you, Martha, pushing this. So thank you and congratulations once again on that well-deserved award. Right, we are ahead of time by a lot, by the way, but we'll move on. So now we're moving into a really important part of today's session. Martin has posted something, but because of my lack of Zoom technical skills, it was only posted to the hosts and the panelists. I have now changed that setting, so you can now post to everyone. So we're going to be looking at AI and education, governance and ethics. And many of you know, while AI offers huge potential in reducing workload and supporting teaching and learning, it also brings many new challenges, from data management and transparency to ensuring fairness and accountability in how it's used. So to explore this further, I'm delighted to hand over to Martin Peoples, who's been leading on AI governance and ethical practice in education. Martin will be sharing insights into how institutions can create safe, responsible frameworks that both protect staff and learners and empower innovation. So with that being said, Martin, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Isam. Okay, so I'll just share my screen here. Okay, everybody can see my screen, I hope. Yeah.
Yes, we can, Martin. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much. Some very interesting presentations there, and from what I can see, TeacherMatic is going from strength to strength. Still very popular with users. That's good to see, and I hadn't realised that the global reach was so global. So that's presumably opportunities for all of you to engage with other people outside your normal circles. Thanks to Peter and the team at TeacherMatic for asking me along here today. I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself, just to give you a bit of context, but also in reference to the request to complete that 2-question survey. You can do it from the QR code at the top right-hand corner here. And so I'll just very briefly say what my background is, and whilst I'm doing that, you can have a go at finishing off the completion of that survey. So I was a lecturer in an FE college in Northern Ireland, and then I got a job working with the JISC Regional Support Centre of Northern Ireland. And some of you may be old enough to remember those institutions, and I'm sure some of you maybe are too young to remember. But that's where I first came across Peter. And Peter and I worked together for a few years. He was in a different centre, but we got to know each other quite well. And when I left that job, I took over looking after all things educational and technology at the Northwest Regional College. Now, that was between 2008 and 2024. But in the last couple of years of that, we took up TeacherMatic as a tool, and as a tool that became very popular in the college and very highly valued. But in the last couple of years in that job, generative AI really started to begin to be something that was something we had to pay a lot of attention to. So in my role, I worked with a team to do a lot of training and sort of spread the news that generative AI is something that we need to look at, we need to learn about, and has great potential for us. Now, I finished that job in 2024, and I took up a course, Masters in Law and Technology at Queen's University in Belfast. And really, what my interest there was that I could see, even over the 2-3 years that generative AI was beginning to be widely used, the pace of development of the technology itself vastly overtook the pace of development of understanding how should we go about, I suppose, governing and regulating the use of the technology. And I thought to myself, rather than sort of moving more into the technology and how it works, I would like to see what could happen in the field of, I suppose, regulating or using ethics and guidance in use of the technology. So that's why I did the masters in. And I was chatting to Peter when I finished my course, and he kind of mentioned, would I mind stepping in and doing a short slot with yourselves? So here I am. So what I just want to do is very quickly go over a few bits and pieces. Now, obviously, with TeacherMatic, there's probably there's some issues around governance and ethics, but I'm really going to look more at the wider use of AI, because I'm sure those of you who are enthusiastic about TeacherMatic also use generative AI and maybe other AI tools outside TeacherMatic as well. So, and there's also, I'm assuming in most institutions, anyway, universities and colleges, there is a wider look at what could be, where AI could be used across other functions in the college, as well as learning and teaching. So very quickly, I want to look at what the feedback from yourselves were. Generally, the regulatory landscape that's out there. Have a look at then governance and ethics broadly, but just very briefly in respect of TeacherMatic, and just maybe there's a question or two at the end if you have time or wish to ask. So let's quickly look then. So if I can see then, if I can just do an escape out of this here and see what the results from the short survey were. So what we can see in the first question was, does your institution have a policy or strategy covering AI? So out of the 6 who replied, there's 1 that doesn't, and there's 1 that's not sure. And the second question then is, in that, then those that know they have a policy, is governance and ethical use of AI addressed? And all of them do address it. So basically, the picture from there is probably what we'd expect, that the use of AI in education is not mature, but it's maturing. And there is an understanding that, as well as getting to grips with how do we use it, we also have to get to grips with, how do we regulate, govern, or manage its use in an ethical way. So let's very quickly go back then and look at the situation regarding the regulatory landscape. Now, in the UK, there isn't a single comprehensive law on AI. that is quite different from the likes of the European Union and a lot of other major economies across the globe. In the European Union, there is the EU AI Act, which is in. It has been published and so on, and parts of it are in place, and the rest of it will be fully in place next year. And it's quite comprehensive, covers a lot of areas of AI, but in particular high-risk AI, which does actually include uses in educational institutions. There are particular applications in education that would be deemed as high risk. But in the UK, there isn't a single comprehensive law on AI. But what there is from the government has been a pro-innovation sector-specific approach. And the way the government has approached this is that they said, right, there's a number of regulators. You're aware of who most of them are: Ofcom, Competition Markets Authority, and so on. And it is said to them, right, go you away and work out how you're going to use or advise the organizations that you have responsibility for. How are you going to advise them on ethical use of AI and what you're going to do about governance and so on? I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at any of the responses from the regulators, but by and large, they're not that specific. They say things like that you expect. Oh, AI, yeah, it's a big thing. We're very pro AI. Everybody has to use it ethically and so on. But there's nothing much by way of substantial statements beyond that. Now, to be fair to the government, then they did say, look, we want people to use AI and use it using these 5 key principles. And if you look at the key principles, they're kind of things you'd expect to see around transparency and safety and security and so on, and accountability. The only thing is that those are key principles that people are advised they should use, but they're not compelled to use. So what you have then is you have these principles, but you don't have law. And as we know, how do you get people to do things? You make it a requirement that they do them. Otherwise, you're hoping that people act the way they ought to act. So now the thing is as well that in terms of laws, there's existing laws that weren't designed for an era of AI, but the use of AI has implications, and the obvious one there is around GDPR, data protection issues. And I'm sure in your training for use of generative AI, you've been told about this. So, for example, when you're doing a prompt, you got to bear in mind the restrictions of GDPR. So, when you're doing a prompt, if you're asking your model like ChatGPT or whatever, Gemini, to analyze some data, you wouldn't be including things like students' names and so on. So everybody knows that. But also, people are increasingly creating their own GPTs, so they're having to train them. So again, the use of sensitive data, certainly data that is bound by the regulation of GDPR, you'd have to be careful about how you'd use that. What you might do is you might anonymize it. Other things might come into play there. In terms of GDPR as well, you're probably aware that Article 22 has severe restrictions on automatic decision making. Basically, you can't do that. You can't have an AI system that automatically makes decisions about individuals unless you get their consent. And there's a few other bits and pieces around that as well. Now, there's been a new sort of slightly modification to that legislation, the data use. The DUA Act came out in the summer of this year, and it has sort of eased some of the restrictions around GDPR and some of the restrictions around automatic data processing. But it's still there, and it's still something that you have to bear in mind. And of course, I'm sure all of your institutions have someone or a group who have legal responsibility for compliance across a whole range of areas. And I'm sure they're making you, or they're working with you in creating DPIAs for your use of AI. Now, in the area of copyright is a very interesting one. I'm sure you've seen in the news stories about various creators of content, digital or music or text, taking cases or threatening to take cases against the large AI companies. Not very many of them have gone far, The one that has gone the distance that's maybe relevant to us is in this month there was the Getty Images case against Stability AI, and as you know, Stability AI, they create Stable Diffusion. So Getty took the case that in the training of Stable Diffusion, their images were the copyright of their images was breached. Now the case was quite prolonged, and what eventually happened was Getty dropped quite a lot of the claims, but the claims didn't succeed. What was left didn't succeed anyway. The judge said basically that that Stable Diffusion hadn't, or Stability AI hadn't actually used the images. They had created mathematical facts about the images that allowed other images to be created, but they didn't copyright the images. And the other issue was that Stability AI said that they used Amazon Web Servers for hosting any of their content, and that these were distributed servers, so they couldn't say for sure that they actually were stored in the whatever they were used for, that they actually were in the UK. So that kind of threw a spanner in the Get Images case as well. So basically the upshot was the Get Images didn't get satisfaction, and there's a couple of other cases in the States and Germany as well. But there really isn't that much in terms of case law on copyright. Now, the reason why it might work, or that might be of relevance to yourselves, if you were, again, I talked earlier about creating your own GPTs. If you're creating your own GPTs, you might want to be a bit careful anyway about the copyright of materials that you might be using. There's another issue about the copyright of material that is produced by generative AI, that generally speaking, copyright only applies where an individual has had the sort of the biggest part in the creating of the content. So there haven't been cases taken about this as of yet that have come to fruition, but it would be most likely the case that you won't have copyright if you use prompts to create something using a large language model. But again, one of the things I would say about this slot that I'm doing, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just pointing up some of the issues that maybe you want to think about, and that a lot of the issues around use of AI and so on, they're not that clear because there hasn't been enough sort of legal cases that have come to completion to give the clarity that's required. So in terms of ethical use of AI, and in particular in the case of TeacherMatic, one of the things you would say is, we all have, I'm sure, in our institutions then gone and modified our academic integrity policies and procedures and so on. But I'm not too sure to what extent the key principles that the government has stated earlier would feature in your academic integrity policies development. So, for example, if you remember back to the slide that I had there, one of the things that they mentioned as a key principle was transparency. So, do you tell your students, if you're using TeacherMatic, that you have created learning materials or that you've created a quiz? Do you tell them, using TeacherMatic, do you tell them that? So, but strictly speaking, if you wanted to be completely transparent, maybe that's something that you would do. Or if, as is the case in some institutions, if you're marking assessments using an AI model, do you tell the students about that as well? That will be a conversation that could be tricky. I know in my course, we were asked as students, what did we think about the lecturers using AI for marking assessments, and most of the class were quite unhappy about it. But anyway, but at least they were being transparent. I know that the university actually does use AI for marking assessments in other areas of the work, but they asked our group, and basically the majority said no, they weren't happy with it. So what I'm saying is, in terms of the ethical use of AI, we all have academic integrity policies and procedures that existed before AI that were probably modified since generative AI became something that we were using, and that modification, maybe using the government's key principles, would be very useful. Now, we would tend to want to build governance and ethics into what we do in education anyway. So in the case of using AI, we have to look. We would want to look at, okay, a reason why we want to do this. There's one simple reason is that it's the right thing to do, but another reason could be around future legislation, because whilst at the minute, I say, in the UK, there's no single comprehensive AI law. There's guidance, but there's not a law. But the government has said that they are thinking about future legislation, and the wider political climate has an influence here. So, for example, things that happen in other major economies are likely to influence what happens in the UK economy. A key example of that is when President Trump came into place in January this year. One of the first things he did was to write an executive order banning any federal development of AI regulation. So basically, that kind of a flavor of regulation or non-regulation filters to other major economies who are, as we all know, having significant sort of trade discussions with the US. But that said, in the future, we can't say the government has said that it's something that they may do, and as I said earlier, maybe circumstances will change that. But if there's going to be future legislation, if you have built in good ethical governance practices at the minute that cover the principles that the government have laid out for us, you would imagine that should legislation evolve, then your good practices will overlap with the regulation that would come through the legislation. Because, as I mentioned, those 5 key operating principles, they're all quite sensible and what you'd expect to see. And so if your practices follow those, you won't have a massive leap to comply with whatever laws may or may not come in. And as I mentioned earlier, doing the right thing is always the right thing to do. So there's not much law in terms of hard and fast regulation, but there's governance and ethics. Now, something that might pop up with yourselves, I know in my own area, Northern Ireland, universities and colleges were very positive about European funded projects, which obviously had EU partners. And when Brexit came along, that lasted for a little while longer and then came to an end. But that's back on the table again, and UK institutions can now participate in some of the EU funded programs. So it would be hard to imagine that there wouldn't be a lot of these projects, especially Horizon projects, which are the big budgets, involved in developing or using some form of AI. And as I said previously, the European Union AI Act applies to high risk use of AI. So if you have a project with European partners where you're either creating or deploying AI tool, chances are it will have to comply with the EU AI Act. Now, your partners will know this and probably will have had quite a lot of guidance on it. But just for you or other colleagues who are involved or may be involved in the future with EU partners, where AI is involved, is something that you'd have to be mindful of and basically you'd have to comply with. So what's going to happen in the future then? We don't know, but we can imagine, because the government tells us there's going to be more use of AI and more facets of education. What I mean by that is outside of teaching and learning. One of the reasons why we know this is in the government's AI plan launched in January this year, they had quite a lot of specific projects that they had there. So some of the specific projects were building elements of an AI infrastructure in the UK, but other projects were about the use of AI in government. So, for example, the government currently has an AI tool called Consult, which they say can analyze 50,000 consultation responses inside 2 hours. That's just one example. But there are other projects ongoing as well. So you can only imagine if the government itself is saying that they are going to use AI for the work of government because it speeds up processes and presumably reduces costs, that there will be an expectation that the same thing will happen in other areas of public sector, which includes yourselves. So there's going to be more AI. just put on that last point there, not to be alarmist, but to be slightly cautionary. I'm not sure how aware you are, you probably have heard of it, the Dutch childcare benefit scandal, where an AI system which was looking at potential fraud in Dutch childcare system picked up an incorrect proportion of immigrants as being people who were guilty of childcare fraud, and turned out that there was problems with the models that were used to analyse all the cases. It ended up costing the government billions of euros, and a number of government ministers had to resign. Now, the thing is, that took place in the last decade, although it came to fruition in 2021. But you can imagine that by now there's far more uses of AI, but also people are far better at managing and governing what they do. But at the same time, you can see that the direction of travel is more use, which means more potential for things going wrong, which means that the need to have proper governance and ethical use and so on, in a more structured and using proper frameworks and so on is very important. Now, there's a lot of help out there that you are probably aware of in your AI future work. So sector bodies like the AOC for colleges and the Russell Group for universities, they have produced a lot of documentation that gives guidance in QAA and just likewise. So there's stuff there already, and I'm sure everybody is familiar with it. The government has produced some guidance as well. The Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, they take the lead in all matters of AI in the government. But also for universities, the Office for Students and Ofsted for schools and colleges, they provide guidance and so on. There is a framework there that is getting more and more traction across the UK outside of the public sector. It's the ISO 42001 standard, and that's an AI management system standard. Now, it came out, was published in December 2023, and it really is about looking at managing strategic and operational management of AI in organizations. And it is very, if that standard is adopted by an organization, you have to be really proactive about what you're doing with governing your use of AI. And to give an example of how why it might be important for the likes of universities and colleges. So it came out in December 2023. In 2024, 1% of companies reported that their suppliers were required to be ISO 42001 compliant. But this year, so far, that number has gone up to 28%. So the idea with companies is that they don't want to be dealing with other companies who are using AI systems and their dealings with them, and them to have a concern about the efficacy and the integrity of those AI systems. So they're saying to them, if you want to deal with us, we want to be confident and comfortable that you have an ethical and well-governed AI set of systems to work with us. So it'll be interesting to see what that number is next year. But in the absence of any, if any hard and fast government regulations, there's some thinking that ISO 42001 will become the de facto regulation. And it's also thought that in the terms of the EU AI Act, it's kind of, although it's quite voluminous, it expresses things in a relatively general way. And the EU has said that it's given a job to standards organizations in Europe to go and produce a set of standards that meet the EU AI Act. And a lot of thinking is that this will be the one that they end up coming up with, or something close to it. So that's just, I suppose, a framework. If you are working in your college or university on your AI governance and ethics, that's something that you might want to have a look at. So that was a quick, hopefully not too rushed run over a few things to think about. So what I'm re-emphasizing is that it's not legal advice. You have lawyers to do that. It's just a few things to think about. Where coming from a background of I've been working in sort of digital transformation in education for a few years, and I've latterly come on some legal issues to make me think. And I think there's a lot of thinking to be done in this area. So I don't know if people want to ask any questions now or later. I know there's a bit of time set aside for questions later. So, but thanks for your attention anyway.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. That's such an important area. I think we all need to start thinking more about. And I just want to showcase that ethics, GDPR compliance is at the heart of everything we do at TeacherMatic. And we actually have an ethics filter, just in case you don't know, when you're using these generators. And Ollie, if you don't mind, could I get you to talk a little about these things, please?
Sure. So there are a couple of things. After I finish talking, I'll go off and find the links. But we did quite a lot of research around a year ago, looking into potentially problematic responses that we could get out of the model of the time. And we developed our own ethics prompt, which kind of sits a layer above everything else we do within TeacherMatic. And we've got the data to show that it does significantly reduce the number of problematic responses that may result from our generators. And if you're an organization admin within TeacherMatic, you can toggle the severity of that prompt. So you can choose between either having it off if you're not particularly worried about problematic responses. You can set it to medium, which only filters the most egregious examples, or you can set it to strict, which does quite a good job at filtering out all potentially problematic responses. So I can put a link in the chat to some of the research that we did and how we came up with this system. I've also created a document on how TeacherMatic complies with the latest DFE AI guidance. So I'll put a link to that as well, because that covers some of the same topics.
Excellent. And do you want to just touch on how we don't train the large language models with any of the data that we input into TeacherMatic?
Yeah, that's a key part of the DFE guidelines as well. So it should really be a given that we don't train any model on the data that's input into TeacherMatic. We're actually using an Azure deployment of all our models. So we have an additional level of safeguarding as well, which is the Azure content filtering. If you've ever put something into TeacherMatic and you've got an error that Azure content filtering is kicked in, that's why that is. That's because Azure actually provides this safety layer on both the input and the output. So if your generation's been blocked by Azure, it's not necessarily because what you've input is problematic, but it could also be what the model has created is in some way problematic.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ollie. Richard, do you want to come in? You've got a few things to say about AI for assessment rules.
Yes, thanks, Isan. As I'm sure many of you know, certainly in secondary, further and some higher education, one of the major bodies is what they call the Joint Council on Qualifications, who make, if you like, rules, although the rules, as Marty was indicating, are not laws, they're not regulations, they're not requirements, but who's in JCQ? ACWA, CCEAN, Northern Ireland, City and Guilds, NSFE, OCA, OCR, Pearson, City and Guilds, as I said, didn't I? Scottish Qualifications and WJEC. So most of the big awarding bodies subscribe to the JCQ rules. And in April this year, April 2025, they came up with a statement about the use of AI in assessing student work. Now, clearly our feedback generator is very much impacted by this, and we always make the recommendation that no assessment should go to students without human intervention, unless it's just very general advice. We have a couple of advisory sections in the feedback generator, which probably can go to students just to help them improve their work. But both formative and summative assessment, we suggest that should always be human intervention. However, I would like to read you, if I can briefly, I'll post it up on the chat as well. But I'd like to read you the actual phraseology. If I can just find it, I've got it here. I will put it into the chat so that you can actually see what it says. Centre, this is their statement from April this year, and this has been corrected and changed from the previous statement the year before. So this is where they currently stand, and this is what all of the bodies that I've just quoted, and I think there are a couple of others that I've missed, all of them, if you go into AI for assessment on all of those bodies' websites, that consideration of any data privacy concerns, going back to what Martin was saying, whether it's appropriate for their teachers and assessors to use AI tools to help mark student work. Where centres do permit AI tools to be used to mark student work, an AI tool cannot be the sole marker. A human assessor must review all the work in its entirety and determine the mark it warrants, regardless of the outcomes of an AI tool. The assessor remains responsible for the mark grade awarded. Now, some of that makes perfectly sense, especially the last bit, but I'm not sure that I get sense out of that centres may determine whether AI may be used, but then if it is used, all the work must be reviewed in its entirety. So I think what they're saying here, and I don't think it's absolutely clear, is that assessment feedback can be given, but if something is actually a summative mark, then it should be assessed by a human as well in its entirety. So make of that what you will. If it's useful for you to have a look, if your organisation, your institution hasn't taken this on board, then I'll post in the chat as well the link to that document. Well worth a read. The rest of the document is pretty good, actually, and I would support almost everything it says. So if you're using our feedback tool or any other tools that assess work within TeacherMatic, please bear in mind that you should always be aware of the awarding body or the exam setter or whoever is involved. Be aware of what their rules are and how it might affect what you're doing within TeacherMatic. We're pretty confident that what we do is all reasonably acceptable, but TeacherMatic is based on artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can make mistakes, so making sure as a person that you agree with what the AI says is never a bad thing. Thanks, Esam. I just wanted to jump in on that. I hope I haven't taken too long of your time.
You're muted, Esam. But I think Martin has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just thanking Richard for that very thoughtful insight, and Martin has his hand up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, just going to say that was very useful information from Richard, and that really points up a thing that I mentioned about GDPR. Article 22 of GDPR forbids automatic decision making by technology tools, which includes AI, if it has a significant effect on the individual. That's what originally it said, and the modification to that this summer, the DO Act, sort of slightly watered that down. But you can see, you know, if you're marking an assessment and that has the potential to determine on its own or with a lot of other assessments the outcome for a student, which then can affect the student's career path, then that's a big decision. So that would clearly come out under that. And going back to what I mentioned about the European Union AI Act and AI systems for education, you know, market assessments will be covered by that as well. So the idea that any, you know, without even JCQ or anybody else making this point, the GDPR will cover that anyway. So you could use the tools maybe to give some indications or to maybe do some summaries of the assessment, but a human has to be involved, and that's kind of fundamental. So it is to, and it probably, we would all agree, it's probably fundamental to our integrity as educators as well.
Yes, thank you, Martin. I entirely agree with you. It's individuals are affected by what we do in our trade. As teachers, it's very important that we get it right and we take responsibility ourselves as teachers, not relying on some external mechanism. Thank you.
Brilliant. So many thanks to you, Martin, for that very thoughtful section on ethics, and Richard and Ollie. It's such an extremely important subject. And as you've heard, ethics and responsible use of AI does really sit at the heart of everything we do at TeacherMatic. So we ensure that innovation goes hand in hand with integrity and good practice. And I do want to say, from a pedagogical point of view, TeacherMatic is not meant to replace what you do, just augment what you do. And it's designed to be a co-planner. So we consider TeacherMatic as a strong first draft. You are the subject expert, you know your learners, and it's this complementary partnership with AI and yourselves that really does maximize, the use of AI and TeacherMatic. So as equally important as this subject, I think, we need to make sure that staff feel fully supported and confident as they bring these principles into their daily teaching. So I think this idea ties perfectly well with my next section, and it's all about how we can support you. So I just want to spend the next probably 10 to 15 minutes talking about the training and support we offer. And I think it's quite comprehensive, right? And we've really worked very hard to make sure that there's something for everyone. Whether you're completely new to TeacherMatic, leading a rollout, strategy across your organization, or just looking to deepen your pedagogical practice in specific areas. So we're going to be looking at what we provide for you. And the first thing is before I move on to the training, I want to touch on this important area of support, our technical help desk. And we know there'll be times where you will need that support. Although TeacherMatic is very easy to use, I think Ollie was saying the other day, in regards to uptime, we have 99.9 something %. So, it's a very reliable and easy to use platform. But just in case you ever have an issue, a question, or just need a bit of guidance, you can simply just email support@teachermatic.com. Richard, if you don't mind, if you can put that in the chat pane for me. And our service level agreement is to reply within 1 working day. And although in reality, most queries are actually answered much faster than that. And it's been especially encouraging, the feedback that we've received from our users. They praised how responsive, supportive, and personable our help desk is. So with that being said, let's just look at some of our training opportunities. So whenever you buy a license to TeacherMatic, 50 licenses or more, you get a practical introduction to TeacherMatic. And this gives staff a general overview of the platform, shows them how to navigate it, and helps them to understand how to use the generators effectively. So we do a few deep dives on these key generators and how you can use them in your own teaching and learning practice. Sometimes, if requested, we'll focus on one particular area like formative assessment, lesson planning, or feedback. But the idea behind this free initial training session is to give you a clear understanding of how TeacherMatic can fit into your everyday workflow. So the training is delivered online, right? And the feedback from these sessions has been incredibly positive, and if you haven't had your free initial training session, please do reach out to me. I'll be sharing my email at the end. So beyond our initial free training, we also have recently introduced a bespoke training sort of options for colleges, schools, and universities. So this really came about because of community demand. So after running these free online sessions, we had so many requests asking us for something more in depth. So something tailored to their specific teams, curriculum areas, and strategic goals. So in response, we've developed this bespoke training offer. So these sessions can be delivered online or in person, and they can range from 1 hour or a full day or even a full 2-day workshop. They're much more specialized, allowing us to dive deeper into specific areas. For example, like the flipped classroom, employability, lesson observations, or even formative assessment. So essentially, these sessions are tailor-made for your organization and built around your goals and context. And I should mention something. We've done our very best to keep these costs as affordable as possible. And this isn't about selling. It's about responding to what you've asked for and ensuring that every school, college, and university can get targeted support when they need it. And I'm going to share with you, the pricing structure here. So we offer flexible options to suit different schedules and needs. As you can see, I won't go into too much detail. Just to let you know that these are base prices. And for any in-person training, we simply add travel costs and expenses where applicable. So if obviously I'm traveling up to Scotland, that can make quite the difference. All right. So just to let you know that this is a new offering that we have for you if you need additional training. So alongside our bespoke training, another great way is to stay connected through our free TeacherMatic webinars. This is the community webinar, and we host 3 community webinars each year, 1 per term, where, as you know, we're sharing platform updates, showcasing new generators, and hearing best practice from other organizations. We also run additional themed webinars throughout the year. And the most recent one just last week was focused on AI in assessment, and from the feedback, it was a brilliant session. If you are interested in this, do sign up to our newsletter. That way you're going to get all the links to the upcoming webinars, plus the recordings, and we upload everything to our YouTube channel. Richard has just posted how to sign up to that, join the newsletter. So thank you very much. So just to reiterate, do sign up to the newsletter. It's a great way to stay up to date, get inspired, and see how others are using TeacherMatic to make that difference. In addition to our webinars, we also run these things called Deep Dive Wednesdays, and they're held on the first Wednesday of each month. I run them myself, and these deep dives focus on a specific theme or area of practice. So they're designed to go a little deeper, and we explore how different generators can be used to support teaching, learning, and assessment. My last deep dive, which was just last week, was all about employability skills, where we looked at a range of generators that help us develop those real-world work-ready competencies. So the next one in December, the first Wednesday in December, is all about supporting lesson observations. So if your responsibility is in carrying out lesson observations, whether graded or non-graded, your role is to support in improving teaching, learning, and assessment. Your role is in coaching and mentoring staff. This is one I highly recommend, and they're very practical, and you'll come away with ideas of how to use these generators straight away. All the deep dives are recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. I have posted the how to subscribe to that to the channel directly, but I can see Richard has kindly now posted the channel name in the chat pane. So after the deep dives, another great way to build confidence in using TeacherMatic is by our relatively new Getting Started with TeacherMatic course. And this is completely free, self-paced, and designed for teachers who are new to the platform, but it's a great way also for anyone who wants a refresher. So the course gives a clear, practical walkthrough of the platform, and we do some deep dives on generators like the lesson plan, quizzes, feedback, and rubrics. So what we found, and this is my theory, is that if staff are given the space and time to complete this course independently, they're much more likely to engage with the platform. And you can access this course by going to teachermatic.com/course. And Richard is way ahead of me. He's put the link inside the chat pane for you. Just to give you a quick look at how this course is structured, it's made up of 10 short focus modules that cover everything from getting started to using the generators to, I think, a very important subject, which is fact-checking and responsible AI use. And I think this follows on from, what Martin was saying and how we need to really use AI ethically and responsibly, and that there should be human oversight in everything that AI produces. We really do need to critically evaluate everything that AI produces. So the course is about 2.5 hours, and it's just really, it consists of these videos. And after each module, you will be tested on the module content. And if you get 70% of that formative assessment correct, you get awarded a digital badge or certificate, more like. So the Getting Started with TeacherMatic course forms part of our rollout strategy. So in addition to the Getting Started with TeacherMatic course, we also have a strategy rollout guide. So it's a free resource designed to support institutions with their next stage of implementation. And it's especially useful for those that are leading digital change. So whether you're a digital lead, an e-learning manager, or even a champion, and you want to effectively roll out TeacherMatic, then I really highly encourage you to sign up for this course. It is some type of presentation, and you can access it at teachermatic.com/strategy. So the guide is built around this very effective change management model called ADKAR. And I'll go into a bit more detail about this change management model. So ADKAR stands for, it's an acronym that stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement, recognition, reward, I would say, right? So, and these together form the 5 stages to provide a very simple, yes, it really is simple, yet powerful structure for management change. So if I were to explain this, if you were rolling out any new piece of technology or any change in an organization, this is a very useful change management model. So the first stage is, how are you raising awareness? What are you doing to tell your staff that you've just adopted TeacherMatic for staff well-being, reducing workload, and improving teaching, learning, and assessment? So what strategies are you carrying out? So in the strategy guide, we suggest a number of strategies. And I think it's really important that leadership does take ownership and communicate why change is necessary. And this takes us on to our next point, which is desire. And desire is all about intrinsic motivation. It's about changing the hearts and minds of those staff that have always done it that way. And in their mind is like, what's in it for me? Why should I change? What I've been doing all this while has been working. So it's all about showing them how it can reduce your workload, how it can improve staff well-being, and just as importantly, about improving learning outcomes. So that's the desire bit of this change management model called ADKAR. The next is knowledge. And I think we've taken, care of a lot of that. So if somehow you're able to integrate the Getting Started with TeacherMatic course as part of your CPD program, I think you would have tackled that stage of this model. But it's also about, getting e-learning champions and advocates to also support their colleagues. So knowledge is, they can take the course, you can get me to deliver, a session for you and get the e-learning managers and champions to support staff in their use of TeacherMatic. Now, once you have the knowledge, it doesn't necessarily mean you can apply that knowledge. An example being is that I've now learned how to use the quiz generator, right? I go and create a quiz, maybe from a YouTube URL, and now I have that quiz. How do I apply it into my class? So now I can perhaps facilitate the flipped classroom model, where students are learning new knowledge outside of the classroom. So when they come in, you can do some of the more higher end of Bloom's taxonomy. So that's the ability. I can use the quizzes for formative assessment. I can use it as starters. I can use it as plenaries. I can use it to check understanding. So once you have the knowledge and you know how to use the generators, fine. But how do we apply that pedagogically? And that's the ability. And finally, it's reinforcement. So you can't expect to roll something out and expect everyone to adopt it. It's a cycle that you have to keep repeating all the time and reinforcing. And you heard me mention R also, in my opinion, is I think it should also stand for recognition and reward. So we need to recognize good practice, and we need to also reward those people that are, using, TeacherMatic innovatively, and most importantly, having an impact on the learner experience and learner outcomes. So that's the rollout guide. So if your responsibility is in rolling out TeacherMatic, please do look at that strategy guide. As I said, we have a monthly newsletter, and I highly recommend that everyone signs up to this newsletter, and also highly recommend that every member of staff signs up for them, because it's a monthly reminder. Because sometimes, and I was a lecturer myself for over 20 years, you get really excited about a particular tool or a piece of technology, but you go back into the classroom and reality sets in. You have to deal with, on average 25, human beings, all with their, individual needs. So sometimes you get really excited, with TeacherMatic, you start using it, but sometimes it fades into the background. So I think by everyone subscribing to a newsletter, it's a really good reminder on a monthly basis that you have TeacherMatic at your disposal. The next thing is we publish regular blogs. If I said on average, we're probably producing 2 to 3 blogs a month. Every one of my deep dive Wednesdays is wrapped around a blog, right? So every time I deliver a blog, a deep dive, we put that video in the blog and we expand on that theme. So do have a look at these blogs, and we share good practice in them So it's worth really sharing these resources with your colleagues and your quality teams too. Highly recommend that you also stay connected with everything happening, with TeacherMatic through our social media channels. We regularly, probably on a daily basis, post on LinkedIn and on Facebook, sharing updates, highlights, and great examples of how educators are using TeacherMatic. So highly recommend that you follow us, on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, perhaps Facebook. And highly recommend, again, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because every time we then edit and upload the videos, you'll get them before we send it in our email shot. Everything that I've mentioned today is in our resources page. And if you go to teachermatic.com/links, that's where you can access, the playlist, our deep dive playlist, our YouTube channel, the Getting Started with TeacherMatic course, how to sign up for future deep dives, and also how to sign up for future community webinars. So it really is the mother, as they say, of all our resources, all on that one page. So I'm going to repeat the link again, teachermatic.com/links. Everything you need is going to be in there. So as we wrap up my section, here's your call to action. So 3 simple steps that will help you and your colleagues make the most out of TeacherMatic. If you haven't done so, complete the Getting Started with TeacherMatic course. And once you complete it, do share your success online with us. We would love to hear, about the course. There is a feedback form at the end of the course. So we're very receptive to feedback, and we're always looking to improve this course even further. If your role is in rolling out TeacherMatic or even any other piece of technology, do look at this rollout guide. It's just useful in general. And of course, do visit teachermatic.com/links and sign up for our future deep dives. So I'm just showing this slide, and I know Richard has kindly put all of those links in the chat pane, but I just wanted to mention it for the sake of the video here. These are all our links, and you can access all of them from the teachermatic.com/links, and the social media is in our footer in the website. Thank you again to all our speakers, to Ollie, Richard, Martha, and Martin, for such an insightful, inspiring session. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to open things up to you, our community. And I think this is the most exciting part of these community webinars. So we can release your mics. All you need to do is just raise your hands, and I have the ability to release your mic, of course. You can also ask your questions in the chat pane. The TeacherMatic team will be hanging around to answer those questions. So all I want to say is, thank you so much being part of this community. And if it wasn't for you, it wouldn't be TeacherMatic. So with that being said, these are our contact details. Peter Kilcoyne, who was unfortunately not able to make today's webinar, that's his email. That's my email there, Ollie's email, and Richard. So want to thank you very, very much for being part of this wonderful community. Thank you very much.